chapter 39. Chapter 39. We're talking about Joseph again. Kind of went from Joseph to Judah, back to Joseph. And Joseph was around 17 years old when he was taken captive or sold into slavery to Egypt. And Joseph would be what I would say the Old Testament view of Romans 8:28. For all things work together for good to them that love God, to them that are called according to his purpose. Because if anybody went through trials, it was Joseph. If anybody was doing right and suffered, it was Joseph. But we see that through it all, God blessed him in more ways. Not only blessed Joseph, but blessed those that were around him in Egypt. So we're going to pick up in chapter 39 and verse 1 and see what happens when he gets there. And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down thither. The Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. So we see the Ishmaelites are the ones that brought him down to Egypt, sold him to the Egyptians. And when he was sold to the Egyptians, it said the Lord was with him. Aren't you so glad that the Lord is always with us? No matter what situation we're in, you gotta imagine being a 17-year-old young man being thrown into a pit and then being brought out of the pit and sold to the Egyptians and to live in the Egyptians' master's house, or in the I guess you said the leader over the military, was a really scary thing to happen. Because you have no clue what's going to happen. You just know that you are in a foreign land. You're in a weird place. He probably spent many nights crying at first. But we're going to see what God did through Joseph at that location. So it says in verse 3, and his master saw that the Lord was with him. Can people say that about us? They can see the Lord's with us. Does our life shine in such a way that the lost can look at us and say, I know the Lord's with them? It's a good thing to think about, right? Like when you think about the disciples, one place said that they could tell that they had been with the Lord. You know, is that the same way with us? So something was special in the life of Joseph, that when the Egyptian leader here saw him, he just knew that he'd been with the Lord. Not only he knew he'd been with the Lord, but that the Lord made him to prosper in his hand. Whatever he did, he would prosper at it. And Joseph found grace in his sight, and he served him. He made him overseer over his house, and all that he had he put into his hand. So pretty much what he did was he made Joseph over everything he owned. Think about that for a second. You come into a foreign country and you are a young man, and all of a sudden the location you're going to put you in control of everything. That's trust. I mean, you don't just put anybody in control of your stuff. How many of y'all would just find a random 17-year-old and say, hey, you are in charge of everything I own? Nobody. You'd be crazy. So there was obviously something special about Joseph, which we know it was the Lord, but obviously Potiphar here saw something special in Joseph, that he put everything under his hand to take care of. It says, and it came to pass from the time that he made him overseer in his house and over all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was upon all that he had in the house and in the field. Why was Egyptian's house blessed? Because who was there? Joseph. We can bring blessing where we're at. You know that? Just us being there can bring blessing. You can bring blessings to your job. because you're there. It means blessings to your family because you're there. Joseph brought blessings to the whole house of Potiphar just because he was there, but not just because he was there, but because he was doing what he was supposed to be doing. He was taking care of Potiphar's house. Even in the midst of being in slavery, being in a strange location, he was still faithful to the Lord. That should be a testimony to us, shouldn't it? No matter what situation we're in, where we're at, stay faithful to the Lord. And he said, and he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he knew not all he had, said the bread which he did eat. And Joseph was a goodly person and well favored. Let's put this verse into our language. Sometimes we have to do that with the King James. Y'all ever have to do it to yourself? Read the King James, you're like, what in the world does that mean? Pretty much what it's telling us is everything that Potiphar had, Joseph was over, and Potiphar never worried about any of it. He never wondered if it was still there, if Joseph did something to it, if it was going to be taken care of. The only thing Potiphar ever was concerned about was there food on the table when he came to eat. That was it. That's what it means when it says, save the bread that he did eat. Everything he knew Joseph was going to take care of. What a testimony that Joseph had to be able to, Potiphar to say, look, I'm not worried about anything. Joseph's got it and we're under control. But something's about to happen. Anytime things are going good, what does the devil like to do? He likes to get into it every single time. So let's see what happens in verse 7. And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, lie with me. Now we could imagine that if we go by the custom of that day, Potiphar is probably pretty old. He wasn't a young guy, and his wife was probably a younger woman, because in Bible times the men would marry the younger women, and of course that would mean the younger women would marry the older men because they had to be established and have a house. They had to be able to supply. You're not going to give your daughter to someone who has no clue how to raise a family, right? Well, y'all, I mean, if your kid brought someone home, they're like, this guy has no job, he has no home, he has no clue what he's doing. What are you going to look at your daughter and say? Dude, he got to go, right? I mean, you want to protect your daughter. So this is the same situation here. He was probably older, and when she sees Joseph, a young 17-year-old, probably handsome maybe, she catches her eye. She says, come lie with me. Now that's a temptation. Now look what he said, what happens there. It says, but he refused. And look what he says to her. Behold, my master wotteth not what is with me in the house, and he had committed all that he had to my hand. In other words, he doesn't worry about anything that's in this house. He knows what he has. He knows that I'm taking care of everything, and he's committed all things into my hand. He says in verse 9, there is none greater in this house than I. Neither hath he kept back anything from me but thee. He said, I got everything in this house. He has not kept anything back from me except for who? His wife. He said, I'm not going to mess that one thing up. He said, how then can I do this great wickedness and sin against who? Now notice that. Anytime we sin against God. It don't matter if it's against Brother Mark. If I sin against Brother Mark, still sinning against God. If I sin against my worst enemy, I don't even know who my worst enemy. I don't even know if I have any enemies per se. Hopefully we don't. But I'm still sinning against God. So Joseph knew, I can't do this because Potiphar trusts me. I'm taking care of all his household, and I can't sin against God. And it came to pass as she spake to Joseph day by day. This went on for a while. We don't know how long it went on. This constant, come on unto me. And he hearkened not unto her to lie by her, to be with her. And it came to pass about this time that Joseph went into the house to do his business, and there was none of the men of the house there within. So he was the only man there with Potiphar's wife there. And she caught him by his garment, saying, lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand and fled and got him out. He did everything right. Did y'all notice that? But what was the first problem? Someone tell me what the first problem was. He was there with Potiphar's wife. Who else was around? Nobody. It's a dangerous place to be. I've always said in my ministry, I will never counsel a woman without my wife present. It's a dangerous place to be because it's her word against his word. Nobody was there to see what was going on. But at the same time, he did nothing wrong. He ran away. But she was able to do what? Grab his garment. All she had to do, grab his garment. That's why I'm afraid in this world sometimes we have a lot of innocent people being charged with stuff they never did. Just because someone got mad at them and they accused them of something. It says it came to pass when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand, she fled and was fled forth. She noticed it. She's like, man, I got it now. She called unto the men of her house. Why weren't they there before? She didn't want them there. And spake unto them, saying, see, he hath brought in a Hebrew unto us to mock us. He came unto me to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice. Is that at all what happened? No. But who are they going to believe? Her. Every time. They're going to believe Potiphar's wife because she is Potiphar's wife. I mean, why would she lie? And she said, I cried out. And in verse 15 it says, it came to pass when he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried, that he fled, left his garment with me and fled and got him out. Now tell me why he would have left his garment. If you're going to lie with a married person, you're not going to leave the evidence behind. So he didn't leave his garment purposely behind. He was trying to get out of there, and she grabbed it as he ran. So she laid up his garment by her until his Lord came home. In other words, until her husband came. And she spake unto him according to these words, saying, the Hebrew servant, which thou hast brought unto us, came in unto me to mock me. Now, none of that's true. I mean, he didn't come in to mock her or to try to seduce her in any way. It came to pass, as I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled out. And it came to pass when his master heard the words of his wife, which he spake unto him, saying, after this manner did thy servant to me, that his wrath was kindled. I was reading commentaries, and I have an idea this wasn't the first time that she had been in any kind of inappropriate relationship with somebody else. Because it seemed like a normal thing with her. She would just call out, come lie with me. It didn't seem like it was anything strange. And when she tells her husband here, he's all of a sudden mad, which he should be. He should be mad at Joseph if Joseph would have actually done it. But at the same time, hasn't Joseph proven his character over and over and over? But it doesn't matter how many times you proved your character. Sometimes when you're in the wrong place, the wrong time, they're still going to get you for it. I encourage young people and adults alike all the time, make sure you protect yourself. Protect yourself at all times. And if you're in the ministry, which many of you like Sunday school teachers stuff, you got to protect your ministry also. It's so easy for, to say, Miss Lisa, well, use your example. Everybody leaves your classroom except one boy. It could happen just like that. And that's what happened with Potiphar's wife here in Joseph. Nobody was there. And all of a sudden, the accusation comes against Joseph that he tried to seduce his wife. So what did they do with Joseph? Anybody remember? Put him in prison, which was really a blessing in disguise. And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, place where the king's prisoners were bound, and he was there in the prison. Listen to verse 21. It's pretty amazing here. But the Lord was with Joseph. Again, the Lord was with him. He didn't leave him just because he went to prison, and showed him mercy and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. You notice everywhere Joseph goes, he finds what? Favor with someone. When you're following God, folks, you're going to find favor with someone. Always. In your job, when you're following God, sometimes you'll be the one that people will go to because they know that you're a believer. You'll find favor with man. It says, and the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison. And whatsoever they did there, he was a doer of it. So again, Joseph gets what? Control of everything in the area. Joseph had a good reputation. The keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand, because the Lord was with him. And that which he did, the Lord made it to prosper. Again, Joseph prospered where he was. What we need to learn from this is, number one, when you're following the Lord's going to bless you and those around you. Number two, protect yourself at all times, because the world's not going to protect you. Your friends aren't going to protect you. Your family will protect you. Prayerfully, your family will protect you. But you got to protect yourself. And number three, as long as you continue to do God's will, even in those tough situations where bad things happen, what does Romans 8:28 say? All things work together for good to them that love God, are the called according to his purpose. It's always going to work out. Now we're going to see that this actually was a blessing for Joseph, because he gets brought higher into the kingdom because of this.